AB tweeting a picture of himself in a Raiders uniform, so trading in the yellow and black for the black and silver. The Steelers reaching an agreement to trade the four-time All-Pro to Oakland for a fifth-round pick and a third-round pick. The clock was ticking with AB due to receive a $2.5 million roster bonus March 17th. He even said yesterday that an announcement would be coming soon, and now here we are. So he'll be Derek Carr's new top target. And for more on how all this went down here in the past 24 hours is bringing our NFL Network insider, Ian Rappaport, who joins me via telephone. Ian, this came together, I guess, rather quickly after the Bills' potential trade fell through. How did this thing come together?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, as soon as the Bills deal fell through, there were a couple teams who kind of stepped in and tried to rescue this and essentially tried to make this Antonio Brown deal happen. One was the Philadelphia Eagles, who were involved just on a limited basis, but of course Howie Roseman was off. He always calls during trades. This was another example just to check in and see. And then the big team was the Oakland Raiders, and this really has been the team throughout the entire process that has stayed in the mix, stayed connected to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and tried to get this deal done. In the end, what the Oakland Raiders end up doing is trading for Antonio Brown, sending a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick in exchange for AB. And then what has happened really over the course of the last 24 hours has been the Raiders negotiating with agent Drew Rosenhaus to try to get Antonio Brown that new contract that he has wanted. And, you know, for AB, the contract has actually been the main thing that was the stumbling block throughout. It wasn't really the trade compensation. It was always going to be somewhere between the value of a second-rounder or the value of a third-rounder. Now it's actually a value of a third-rounder plus. But this really was about the contract that AB, as part of this deal, does, in fact, get a new contract that makes him one of the highest-paid receivers in the NFL. And that is one of the things that he comes away with this, that helps him come away with this as one of the biggest winners.
Yeah, AB looks to be coming out of this thing pretty clean. Let me ask you, who did it come down to? Because the Titans and Redskins were apparently in the mix late. Was this a one-team track for AB here in the last 24 hours?
Well, the Philadelphia Eagles dipped their toe in the water a little bit, but really this was about the Oakland Raiders. And, of course, the Steelers lost a lot of their leverage when the Bills deal fell through. There weren't a lot of suitors. So, you know, teams like the Titans and the Redskins, those teams fell by the wayside early. And so the Raiders were kind of one of the really the favorite throughout. The Bills obviously jumped in there, tried to do a deal a couple of days ago, did not happen. And the Raiders stayed in contact and just tried to make sure that they could get that deal done with Antonio Brown. And as far as what that deal actually looks like, I mean, he basically took that big contract that he got with the Steelers, added new money that makes it worth around $19 million. Here's the deal he's got left. It's 3 years, $50.125 million. He used to have only $38.925 million. He gets $54.125 million guaranteed, and of that deal, $30.125 is fully guaranteed. So that is what Antonio Brown's win at the end of all this comes. And by the way, quarterback Derek Carr for the Raiders, who has been pushing for this deal for some time, he has already made contact with Brown. That relationship obviously key to making this whole thing work.
Yeah, this was quite the drama, to say the least. Just watching this entire process with AB. After the Bills deal fell through, a lot of folks felt like the leverage kind of shifted at that point. Just how much control did Antonio Brown have in terms of his next destination?
No, he had a lot of control. I mean, you know, he was in a situation, I think, with, you know, basically that a lot of star players, really big-time star players would be in, which is to say, unless everything is perfect, I may not show up. And that is a lot of leverage right there. And we've seen, you know, over the last couple of years, players really exert their leverage with whether or not they're going to show. Le'Veon Bell did the exact same thing. Basically said to the Steelers this year, I'm using my own power to not show up. And I think for Antonio Brown, the right to not show up is something that made sure that the Bills deal didn't happen. And in this deal, you know, the Raiders knew that if they wanted it, there were certain contractual things he needed to do. And, you know, getting him a new deal was one now at a max value for that new deal, he can make $54.125 million over the next 3 years.
So Mike Mayock's first big trade happens to be a huge one. And then you look at John Gruden now. He's got a brand-new toy for Derek Carr to throw to. How does he play in this, and how does he plan to use this new talented receiver, arguably the best in the game right now?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Mike Mayock inherited when he took over the Raiders. I mean, obviously they got a lot of first-round picks. They got 3 of them. They had spent last year trading away big-time assets in Khalil Mack, big-time assets like Amari Cooper, and now, they get one of the best receivers in the NFL. All the issues that came with it, of course, but one of the best receivers in the NFL, and all they gave up was a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. Now, they gave him some money, too. The money was a big deal, and having to pay someone to be the highest-paid receiver in the NFL, that's capital, and that obviously affects the value greatly. But essentially, what the Raiders did was they traded a 3rd-round pick plus for one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Raiders' motto is just win, baby, and AB obviously his talent can help him do that on the field. It's that off-the-field baggage that we've talked about ad nauseum. Why was that a problem for other teams, but apparently not a problem for the Raiders, obviously trading for him?
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that, it's a place that can welcome him and a place that can kind of deal with the issues off the field. And, he has been very upfront about not wanting a quarterback who will call him out in the media. Derek Carr is never going to call out Antonio Brown in the media. Derek Carr is never going to, do anything in the media that would reflect on anyone in a negative light. That's just the way Derek Carr is. And, that's obviously a dramatic change. And look, I mean, it was time for a change. I mean, it was time for Antonio Brown. It was time for Antonio Brown to move on from the Steelers. That relationship had clearly run its course. But it is fair that, a lot of the issues he had in Pittsburgh, he's not going to have in Oakland. It's not going to be a bad locker room, for instance. And it's interesting now. I mean, look, it's a couple of days before free agency. And the Raiders now added a really big piece. They started to play well at the end of the year this year. We'll see how much better they can get pretty quickly, and adding one of the best receivers in the NFL, certainly on the field, does not hurt.